Have you ever opened your eyes one morning not to an alarm? Not because there's something you must do, but simply because something inside you couldn't stay quiet. A strange stirring in your chest, at once hollow and urgent, with no clear origin and no clear purpose. Yet it reverberates in your mind as a single, weighty question. Who am I without the mask I wear? Maybe you're someone who's always been strong. Maybe you're the one who always figures things out. Maybe everyone around you counts on you to be okay. But then one day, none of that is enough to keep you standing. You don't want to keep pretending. You're no longer excited by the pursuits that once drove you. You don't feel alive. You feel like you're merely going through the motions. No one else knows. No one else sees. But you do, because deep in the silence, a voice is rising. Who am I if everything I've believed about myself is only a temporary disguise? This isn't a cry of someone lost. It's the anthem of a soul awakening. You're not insane. You're not broken. You're not off course. As thou should be so when you're standing at the threshold of a sacred journey, the journey back to the truest you, unconditioned and unproven. You've dwelled long enough in labels. Now it's time to live in presence. Not to become someone new, but to remember who you always were before the world taught you who to be. You never arrived wearing a mask. As a child, you lived fully in each moment, laughing when you were happy, crying when you were sad, feeling anger when you were hurt, and loving without conditions. Somewhere along the way, though, you learned this inconvenient truth. Parts of you aren't always welcome. When you got too loud, grown-ups told you to be quiet. When you spoke honestly, someone lectured you on manners. When you showed your feelings, you were labeled too sensitive, or people simply turned away. So you began to tuck those natural parts of yourself away bit by bit, layer by layer, trading authenticity for approval, for recognition, for a sense of belonging. That's how your very first mask was born. Not because you were flawed, but because you were wise enough to survive. You adapted to fit in, and before long, the mask became part of your identity. You became the good kid, the calm one, the problem solver, the one everyone counts on. You learned to play the role so well that you forgot where the role ended and the real you began. Here's the catch. A mask doesn't feel. It only performs. When you ache, the mask smiles. When you're exhausted, the mask strains on. When you feel like giving up, the mask forces you forward because everyone's depending on you. Meanwhile, the soul inside grows smaller, silent, depleted, lost. Not from weakness, but because it's been ignored. Have you ever sat alone in the quiet and felt like a stranger to yourself? Have you ever smiled through a conversation only to feel a hollow chill inside, as if the life you're living isn't truly yours? That's your whisper of awakening, a gentle reminder that you've worn your mask long enough. I'm not saying you must rip it off all at once, but imagine this in one small moment. You dare to exhale and admit, I'm tired, I'm not okay, I don't know who I am anymore. That moment, however brief, is the real you stirring back to life. You don't have to destroy every mask that helped you survive. They serve their purpose. But you didn't come here merely to survive. You came to live fully, imperfectly, and courageously. And living that way starts with one tiny act of bravery, allowing your soul to breathe. When you think of the word me, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Your name, your job, your personality traits, your greatest successes or your deepest failures. The memories that won't let go. Most of us believe that these things define who we are. But imagine stripping each piece away. What if one day you were no longer called by that name? No longer played that role? No longer had those characteristics? Would you still be you? The answer might unsettle you. Because what you've always called me is actually a construct, a program written when you were very young, scripted by your parents' voices, your teachers' expectations, society's demands, the wounds you endured, and the parts of yourself you were forced to deny. You were taught to be strong, to be polite, to excel, to never disappoint, to never be weak, selfish, or too different. So you created the most acceptable version of yourself. You laugh on cue. You stay silent when expected. You push yourself past exhaustion. You nod politely when your gut wants to shout no. You live as if you're the protagonist in someone else's screenplay. And the longer you stay in that role, the more you believe that it's truly you. But here's the truth. No one tells you that ego self isn't your deepest essence. It's just a shell built to help you survive. A sophisticated defense mechanism, a psychological mask honed over the years. And as you begin to awaken, you're not becoming someone new. You're simply peeling away layers that no longer serve you. Your ego isn't the enemy. It helped you navigate the world, but it doesn't know how to lead you into authentic living. It fears rejection. It craves approval. It obsesses over control. It reacts from fear, not truth. And the sad irony is this: the more you identify with that ego, the farther you drift from your true self. You start feeling drained trying to maintain the image. You feel hollow after praise. You feel lonely even when everyone's applauding your performance. Because your soul cannot breathe through a programmed identity. Awakening isn't about becoming more enlightened, noble, or perfect. Awakening simply means pausing and seeing that you are not the stories you tell yourself. You are not the labels others stick on you. You are not the name you cling to. You are the silent observer of it all, awake, present, and deeper than any programming. Once you learn to distinguish ego from essence, you stop chasing validation. You no longer need to be right or better than everyone else. You only need to be honest with what's here in this moment. And that honesty is the beginning of true freedom. There comes a time, not because you planned it, but simply because life moves on when everything that once defined you just stops working. You no longer feel that spark for the passions that used to ignite you. The relationships that once made you feel seen now feel heavy. The ideals that once inspired you ring hollow. Outwardly, everything seems normal, but inside, something has cracked. You scramble to rebuild the old you. You listen to motivational podcasts, draft new plans, enroll in another course, reconnect with old friends to find yourself again. But nothing sticks. You feel adrift in a thin fog, uncertain of who you are, unsure of where to go. No one seems to understand the fracture inside you. And you start to wonder, am I broken? Am I losing ground? Why does nothing feel right anymore? Here's the truth, you're not broken. You're not moving backward, and you're not lost. You're standing at a threshold of transformation. The story you once lived no longer contains you. You've outgrown it. Your soul is calling for a larger, truer container than any title or role can hold. In ancient alchemy, this is called calcination, the burning away, the collapse of everything impure. Likewise, in your awakening journey, this moment of shattering isn't an end, it's a sacred beginning. Only when the old narrative falls apart does the real truth have room to emerge. You don't need to know what comes next. You only need the courage to admit, I no longer want to be who I used to be. That's not rebellion, it's the first whisper of your soul coming home. Have you ever noticed what follows when your ego's shell finally shatters? Suddenly there's an empty space, no roadmap, no titles to cling to, and no energy left to uphold an old image. In that void, you might feel adrift between the world you once belonged to and a world you no longer fit. Yet, if you can resist the urge to fill that emptiness with frantic doing or overthinking, something fragile and remarkably real begins to stir. It's an inner state that doesn't demand attention, achievements, or approval. It doesn't declare, I am strong or I am weak. It simply present to one and once, awake, as light as breath, as still as a deep river. And you realize this isn't new. It's always been here. You first met this presence as a child running barefoot across the earth, gazing at the sky for no reason, laughing so freely you forgot you were being watched. That was your essence, unconditioned, unforced, and fully itself. Essence needs no label. It doesn't have to succeed or heal to deserve existence. It isn't afraid of being seen, doesn't compare, doesn't compete. It is whole even when you're not trying. So you might find yourself simply sitting amid the fallen fragments of ego, uncertain of what comes next and oddly unafraid. Because within you, a part untouched by hurt has begun to awaken. Not because it's stronger, but because it knows it never has to prove anything to be itself. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about rediscovering who you were before definitions took hold. It's you before you became anyone else, and you're starting to remember it. Not through memory, but through each gentle inhalation and silent pause. You may not yet know what living from essence looks like, and that's perfectly fine. You don't need to rush into it. Just stay with it, moment by moment. Beneath the masks, Beneath the wounds, beneath the expectations, there's a you who never disappeared, waiting to be recognized. Essence isn't an escape hatch. It's a sanctuary where you can face what still needs healing. As the first light of awareness breaks through, the shadows begin their own transformation. To live fully in essence, you'll walk back through every layer of ego you once held on to, and that journey, as it turns out, begins not in peace, but in the fire that forges you anew. Calcination, burning away the old. Remember, Wes, waking up to your true self isn't a gentle sunrise. It's a trial by fire. Even though your ego's shell has cracked, its fragments still cling to your thoughts, habits, and automatic reactions. In alchemy, this is the first stage, calcination, burning away what's impure. This blaze isn't fueled by an external flame, but by the crises you can't avoid. A relationship falling apart, a job that no longer inspires you, a body that refuses to cooperate, a long-cherished dream collapsing. Suddenly, there's no turning back. Everything you once used to define yourself loses its shape. There's no rescuer, no shortcut, only this fire, consuming your old beliefs, your illusions, every last mask. Emotions surge: anger, hurt, confusion, despair, denial, self-blame. Your mind begs you to return to the familiar. Just go back to who you were. Try harder, this will pass. Maybe it's all in your head, but you know you can't pretend anymore. You might fool others, but you cannot fool yourself. This alchemical fire doesn't destroy you, it frees you. It burns away the always strong image. It stokes through the pressure to be perfect. It incinerates the fear that if you change, you'll lose love. This is conscious surrender. You stop resisting the collapse and let your old self fall away like an outdated house, no longer big enough for your soul. And from those ashes, something begins to glow, not from effort or outside influence, but from deep within the ruin you thought would bury you. A single breath, a moment of stillness, your first unguarded glance at yourself, without embellishment or excuse. This is step one, not to become more successful, but to become more real. Not to upgrade your ego, but to start living from a foundation unconditioned by old expectations. Calcination isn't the end. It's freshly cleared ground for something entirely new to take root, because before, you were too busy defending your image. Now, there's nothing left to hold on to, only the truth. Dissolution, melting, and facing the unknown. When the fire of calcination has burned away your old masks, what remains isn't a fully formed person, but a formless, undefined mass. No solid shape, no familiar anchor, no role to cling to, just an empty, echoing space. This is dissolution melting down everything into liquid uncertainty. There's no more fierce blaze, but there's not yet any peace. It feels like plunging into deep, cold water without a sense of direction. Your edges soften, thoughts lose their sharpness, motivation drifts away, memories float like debris. You might cry without knowing why, or sit for hours with nothing particular on your mind. Many fear this phase more than they fear fire, because here, you aren't anyone, yet you're not yet anything. You're suspended between what has died and what is waiting to be born. You're not fleeing outward, but you don't yet have the strength to step forward. You're simply here, fully immersed. This melting isn't chaos, it's a deliberate letting go. You stop clinging to "I should be," "I must," or what others expect of me. Instead, you allow whatever surfaces to rise, emotions once suppressed, dreams long abandoned, the small, silenced voice that feared judgment. Not to analyze, not to fix, just to witness and let it dissolve, dissolving like dust on water, like the ego that believed itself the center of the universe, like the fear that had nowhere else to hide. And in that still, flowing space, when you stop striving, stop interpreting, stop resisting, something quiet begins to emerge. Not from your mind, not from teachings, but from deep intuition. I'm still here, and what is truly me cannot be washed away. Dissolution doesn't take you from yourself. It melts away everything that isn't you, making room for your true essence to gently rise through emptiness, not force. If you find yourself here, don't rush to find meaning. Let essence rediscover itself in the melting of what no longer serves. This isn't being lost. It's being returned to who you really are. Once the fire has burned away and the old self has melted down, What's left isn't yet a pure essence. It's a murky blend of feelings, memories, beliefs, and doubts that cling to the edges of who you were. Now you enter a subtler phase of alchemy separation. Here, there's no flame and no flowing dissolution. Instead, you pause, you look closely, you begin to sift slowly and consciously through everything that still remains. You start to notice which dreams you chase simply for approval, which childhood beliefs you carried unexamined, which relationships you clung to out of fear of being alone. You don't judge or shame them. You simply see them clearly and let them go. In separation, you become the observer. You no longer treat every rising emotion as gospel. You stop letting past conditioning run your present moment. You start to ask yourself, is this feeling authentic or just an old reflex? Am I really in pain or am I replaying a learned response? Do I genuinely believe this? Or did I adopt it to earn someone's love? You don't need instant answers. The power lies in the act of distinguishing yourself from these narratives instead of merging with them. No more, I always fail. No more, I have to please everyone. No more, I can't live without them. You begin to see these statements as thoughts, not truths, and when you view them that way, they lose their hold on you. This work requires silence, not to hide from the world, but to listen for a different voice, the voice of free perception. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. It simply whispers. This is real. That isn't serving you anymore. Keep what resonates. Like an alchemist straining impurities from gold, you're filtering out what no longer belongs. Not to become perfect, but to become authentic. You choose what stays, what goes, and what truly touches your core. Separation doesn't forge a new you. It reminds you of who you've always been, hidden beneath layers of old conditioning. You begin to live from a place beyond control and expectation. And that clarity is your proof you're shedding the ego, not through struggle, but through unmistakable insight. After fire, dissolution, and separation, your journey shifts from letting go to weaving together. You're no longer lost in chaos. You've seen what truly belongs and what doesn't. Now comes conjunction, the alchemical merging, where once scattered pieces reunite and crystallize into a new way of being. This isn't about returning to who you were, nor about becoming someone completely different. It's the subtle fusion of what's been purified and the part of your soul reaching upward. You don't need to discard everything. You simply hold on to what's most authentic, steady, and profound, and live from there. In this phase, you begin to notice that strength isn't control, but the courage to remain supple. Maturity isn't doing more, but knowing what's worth doing. Freedom isn't the absence of ties, but the ability to stand in your own center, regardless of the world around you. Conjunction isn't flashy. There are no dramatic upheavals, but inside, something rises with clarity. I don't have to become anyone. I only need to live honestly from what's been refined. I don't need love for what I show. I choose to live as someone already held by love. I don't have to fight the darkness. I can sit with it and hold on to the light. You cease living to chase approval. You begin living to radiate from your core. There's no need to justify yourself. You simply show up from your deepest truth. Conjunction isn't the final destination, but it's the first time you live from root instead of surface. Peace here doesn't come from everything being perfect, but from no longer being dragged by what isn't you. Confidence here doesn't come from always being right, but from no longer fearing to be wrong. In the quiet, a new self emerges, unhurried, unforced, undefined. It simply is present, and that presence alone is enough. Fermentation, soul awakening from within. After you've reconciled and reunited the truest parts of yourself, something unexpected stirs, not absolute stillness, nor the triumphant "I'm done," but a subtle inner movement, as if a seed has begun to ferment deep in the earth. This is fermentation, a living transformation that follows dissolution and conjunction, beyond mere willpower or intellect. You wake each morning to a slightly different mind. Reactions you once had simply don't arise. You no longer have to force peace, you are becoming peace. Fermentation is like the hush before the first signs of a new season. You no longer chase awakening, it's quietly unfolding inside you, reshaping how you show up in the world. There's nothing dramatic, and it needs no audience, but it recalibrates everything about your presence. You might notice that you feel unexpectedly light with no clear reason, are moved by small, everyday wonders, no longer crave drama, competition, or conflict. Hold a calm center even amid external chaos. These are signals that you've entered a deeper layer of being, where soul, body, emotion, and awareness integrate into one seamless whole. You aren't living as a seeker of answers anymore. You're living as the answer itself. Old questions like "who am I?" lose their tension because you understand no single definition can contain your essence, and you're at ease with that. Fermentation is silent resurrection. No declarations, no manifestos, just a delicate alchemy unfolding moment by moment. From here, you're ready for the final two phases of your inner alchemy: refinement of essence and solidification of truth. There's no turning back, no more experiments. You're becoming yourself at the deepest level. Distillation, purifying your essence. You've journeyed through burning, dissolving, separating, uniting, and fermenting. Layers of ego have been shed, and the stirrings of your true self have awakened. Now comes the next step. Distillation, the alchemist's process of refinement, where you go deeper into yourself, not to discard, but to purify. If fermentation was a silent biological shift, distillation is a deliberate, conscious act. You begin to examine every part of your life with fresh clarity. Which habits sharpen your mind and heart? Which relationships draw you back to your essence, rather than pull you into an old role? Which rhythms of life nourish your presence, instead of scattering your attention? You no longer live by outdated impulses or chase fleeting emotions. You choose to clear the energetic field around you, like a patient alchemist filtering each precious drop from a crude mixture. You distill your life, each action, each choice, each breath into its purest form. In this phase, you accept that not everything labeled good serves you, and not everything deemed right truly fits. You sift through all of it with inner honesty, and wonderfully, you feel no regret, because the clarity within you outweighs any external temptation. You learn to step away from noise, not to flee the world, but to avoid being dissolved in it. You eat more mindfully, listen more attentively, speak more deliberately. You move from simply being human to fully living as your authentic self. Distillation also brings a powerful realization: you don't need a brand new world. You need a renewed self within the world you already inhabit. There's no need to escape society. You only need to change how you inhabit it from the inside. You cease striving to maintain awakening because you've become that state. And when you reach a point of sufficient purity, of calm, of depth, of inner lucidity, you arrive at the final moment. Not a dramatic climax, nor a dazzling revelation, but a true crystallization, the ultimate stage of your inner alchemy, where everything that melted away can re-emerge refined, whole, and entirely itself. Coagulation, the crystallization of soul. This is the final phase of your inner alchemy, and perhaps the quietest. No more upheaval, no more confrontation. No need to strive, only a presence restored to its purest essence. In alchemy, the stage is called coagulation. From a soul once fragmented by roles, expectations, fears, and desires, you now return as a unified whole, no longer broken, no longer doubting, no longer needing to prove anything. You no longer seek truth. You live as truth itself. You don't declare, "I am awakening." You simply exist. No labels, no names, no performance. Everything flows naturally, like your breath, your footsteps, the way your gaze meets another's. Coagulation doesn't make you a higher version of yourself. You're still human, feeling emotions, meeting limitations, having tender moments, but now you see them without merging into them. You're not drawn into old stories. You don't have to force yourself into greatness. You are simply you, nothing more, nothing less, no effort required. And from this place, your integrity ripples through every corner of life. Work becomes sacred, even in the smallest tasks. Encounters with others become profound, even if they're brief. Love is no longer a refuge to cling to. It becomes something you radiate. Suffering is not something to escape, but a natural part of living. You don't need anyone's validation anymore. You have certified yourself not through achievements, but through honesty and wholeness. And when you live as a soul that has truly crystallized, you no longer ask, "Who am I?" That question dissolves because you embody yourself without words, without proof, without needing to be anything else. At that moment, you realize this journey never led you somewhere new. It simply brought you home to the one place you never actually left your own pure essence. You were never fake. You were simply asleep. If you've journeyed this far, If you've felt each stage of transformation from dissolution to union, from confrontation to awakening, pause for a moment. Not to analyze, but to sense the quiet unfolding within you. Alchemy has never been about accumulating knowledge. It's about remembering. Remembering that you already carry every stage of awakening, every sacred symbol, every spark you need to become gold. No one outside of you can lead you there. No technique holds the soul key. No teacher outshines the fire burning within. You are the alchemist, not because you're flawless, but because you're willing to face truth, to meet your darkness, to embrace the parts you once avoided and transmute them into light. You don't have to become spiritual. You only need to become honest with your emotions, honest with your fears, honest with the dreams you set aside. If you feel confined in your current life, if everything you believed is starting to crack, if you feel lost in a world that once felt familiar, it may not be that you're lost at all, but that your soul is calling you home. Coming home isn't about returning to the past. It's about passing through every false identity to touch the place where you've always been enough, even when you feel like nothing. You're not broken. You don't have to become something new. You only need to give your true self a chance to breathe, to live, to emerge. Starting today, begin anew, not from a starting line, but from your center. From the place where you need no justification to be yourself. From the place where every wound becomes fuel for your light. From the place where you no longer ask, "Who am I?" but simply become what you cannot not be. Gold is not discovered, it's produced. And you are that process. If what you've just heard resonated with you, tap the like button, not for my sake, but to help this message reach other souls on their journey home. And if you're ready to dive deeper, hit subscribe now. This isn't just another channel to consume content. It's a space to guide you back to yourself, one breath at a time.